In this video, we will be covering functions with Python. What I'm going to do first is just declare a couple of variables. And we're going to go ahead and define a function. So to declare a function, all we need is def, and then we're going to get the full name. So get full name. And we're going to be taking in a couple arguments, the first and last name. So we'll just go first, last. And it's important to note we don't need to have the exact same variable name. That's because once we are inside the function, the variables first and last, the scope of those variables is they're only going to be usable inside the function. So I'll just set a variable to name equals first. And then what we're going to do is add a blank space character. So that way we have a space between the first and last name. And we're going to go ahead and return name. So below our two variables, we're going to set a new variable called full name equals get full name. Then if we go ahead and print that, we get the full name on the right. Now if we go back and look at our function get full name, there is some redundancy. So we declare a variable called name and then we return the exact same variable. We can simplify this a bit. We can just get rid of return. And we don't need the name and equals. We can just return the value first plus the space character plus the last name. And that simplifies it. And if we go ahead and rerun it, we should get the exact same results. Okay, the next example, I'm going to initialize a new variable called statement. And let's say we wanted to grab all the words from this. So right above this, I'm going to define a new variable, get words from string. And the return value, we are going to return sentence split. We're going to split this by the space character, and that should give us a list of words. Get words from string, and then we'll pass statement. And if we go ahead and print the words, we should get a list. And we do have a quick error, so what we're missing is the colon. So we define our function name, and then whatever variables, if any, that we are passing in. And what is needed at the end of the line is a colon, which was missing. So if we go ahead and run that, we're able to print out take me out to the ball game, and each one is a word. In this next function, we're going to look at is passing in a default value. Let's say we have a function in which we're not always going to pass a value for the second argument. We can set a default instead. So if I define a new function, player position, and then let's say the full name will be the first argument, followed by the position. And let's say some players we will not know what the position is, or there's no position assigned. We're going to set a default value to none. And inside this, so we don't know if the value is going to be none or the value is going to be an actual value. So we could put in a conditional statement. So if position return, and we need string.format, and go with the full name followed by the position. And if there's no position, we're going to put in not sure what position. So we want the curly braces, plays. Now we can go ahead and call this function without passing in a value. And so we passed in a name. And we did not pass a position character in at all, or a position argument in at all. So inside the function we have if position. Now the way this works is the if statement, so if a certain value, so if position is truthy, meaning it can be when it's none, that's a false value. If it's set to false, a Boolean value, that's also a falsy value. So any truthy position, on the other hand, will be the value of true, or any string value would return a value of true. So since position is none because we did not pass it in, and it basically took the default value, what we hit was this statement right here. So we hit the else block inside the conditional. And let's do another example where, so this time we're going to pass in full name, and we're going to pass in a value. Actually, we got to print this. Inside the if statement, we hit the very first item. So if position, it was set to a string value. So we got Frank Thomas placed third base. Another thing we can do is we can call functions from other functions. So in this next example, we're going to take the full name value. Let's say we want both of those words to be capitalized. Let's go ahead and define a function called capitalize. And let's take in a string. Now we want to handle certain edge cases. Let's say if we received an empty string, we need to do something with that. If not, we want to capitalize. We want to set the first character in the string to a capital letter. So let's put in a conditional statement saying if the length of the string is equal to 0. So this is basically an empty string. Let's just return that empty string. Else return. Now the string, basically we're getting the string by the index value, and this is a 0-based index, similar to an array or a list. So the first character is a 0 index value, so which is going to be the first letter of the word, whereas everything after the index of 0 is going to be the rest of the word. So we want to keep that as lowercase. So we're going to concatenate it with the rest of the string that we had passed in. So we're going to be starting with the first character. So all we need is 1:: will take everything from the first character to the end of the string. So in the name Frank, it'll be RANK is what this will be. And we're going to set the rest of these to lowercase. So we're going to go back into our player position function and call the capitalize method or capitalize function. Then if we go down and print this once again, now what we see was we passed in the single string value of Frank Thomas, so it does not know that there are two separate words there. It just capitalized. Well, any string value that we pass in here, we told it to capitalize the very first letter. So if we pass Frank Thomas as an entire string, then it's only going to capitalize the very first letter in the name Frank. So what we can do at this point is create a new function. We'll call this UCWords, in which we will capitalize every single word that we send it. So what we need to do is create a list from the words that come in. So we're going to set a variable called list. When I do this, I generally use LYST because if we use the correct spelling LIST, that's a reserved keyword inside Python. So we can get around that by setting a variable to list with a Y. And we're going to go ahead and split this by the space character. So now we have a list of the words. This is similar to what we did from get words from string. And actually what we can do is, since we already wrote this function here, we can just copy this in instead of rewriting this. this code, and we're going to pass in W for the words that we passed in. And from there, we're going to return a value in which we are going to start with a space character. So we're going to be joining a space in between all of the words, and we already defined a capitalize method. So since we have the words spread out in a list, we can call capitalize W for W in list. Now we need a handle if there's an empty string value, so we're going to put if W is not empty. And so we can replace capitalize with UC words, and then if we go down to the bottom and rerun our code, we can see that we've successfully capitalized both words within the name. And functions are also good for things like just performing simple calculations. So let's say we want to get a player's batting average. So we're going to define a variable called get batting average. And so what we need to calculate somebody's batting average is we need to know the number of hits they've had and the number of at-bats. Actually, let's put this at the very bottom. Cut that. Create some space. Get batting average, return. So we're going to return hits divided by at-bats. So let's say our player had get batting average 174 hits out of 549 at-bats. We're going to go ahead and print the batting average. And so we got a value of 316 plus a bunch of other numbers, just because when we did the division, it just happened to come out to a long decimal point. So what we could do in our function, let's say we've done this in a whole bunch of places. Since we used a function for this, we only have to make the adjustment at one place. And this is the power of using functions. So all we need to do is go back to our function. We're going to call the Python built-in round function. And let's say we're going to round this to 3 decimal places. And so if we rerun all of our code, now if we have used this function a bunch of times, it's going to be fixed everywhere. It's going to be rounded to 3 decimal places is the value that we're going to get after we get a return value from every time we call this function. The next thing we'll be covering is variable length arguments. There are going to be situations where we will need to create a function, but we will not know how many arguments that we will be passing in. And let's go ahead and define a new function, a create sentence function. And the first item is going to be a delimiter. And the second, so the second item we're going to be passing in is the variable length. So if we use a single asterisk, this will indicate that we're going to be using a variable length. So words can consist of 1 or more arguments. And once we are inside the function, what this creates is a tuple. So if I go ahead and print out the type, and let's use the take me out to the ball game example. So I'm going to go over here to one of our previous answers, copy that, s equals create sentence, and so our delimiter is just going to be the space character, and take me out to the ball game. We do not want that to be a single list. Obviously, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 arguments versus 2 that we had defined, but since this is asterisk words, it could be one too many. So words is going to consist of all these arguments from the second argument till the very end. And let's go ahead, and since we are already calling that function, the type of words should be printed out. And as you can see, this is a tuple. And tuples and lists and dictionaries we'll be covering in a later video. But what we're going to do for now is basically join these back together and creating a sentence out of them. So what we want to do is return delim.join. So we're going to be joining a space character with all of the words to create a single sentence. So if we go ahead and print this out, we have a single string of single sentence called "Take me out to the ball game." Now Python has one more way of defining variable length arguments. So let's create we're going to create a new function. So we're going to make this one different by adding an underscore. That way we don't have the same function defined twice. And similar to the last one, we're going to take in a delimiter and double asterisk words. So this is a little bit different than the previous one. What's going on here is the words variable, the variable length, is actually a dictionary. So let's go ahead and print the value. And then we're going to go ahead and print the type like we did previously. And the way that we're going to call this is a little bit different also. So we're going to use our S variable again. This time we're going to call underscore create sentence. And we're going to take in the same delimiter, which is a space character, followed by, we're going to give each one of these a keyword argument. Word 1 equals take, followed by word 2. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit different. Instead of a tuple, we have a dictionary because of the double asterisk. And inside, we have a dictionary of key values. So word 1 is going to be take, and then word 2 is going to be me. So this is probably not the best use case for this. Obviously, the previous example would have been a much better use case for this. But if we did want to do the same thing as the previous function, we still could. So we would have to do something like this, create a list. And now our lists, so we can create a list so an empty list is just going to be a pair of brackets. But what we need to do is words key for I, which would be the index, key in, and we must call the enumerate function. That is a built-in Python function, and we're going to be enumerating a new list based on the values for each key. So we need to pass in words dot keys. And just to verify, we'll just go ahead and print the list. So similar to that, so now we have basically the list of words, which would be similar to what this would have been. So we're going to delim.join and then list. So just to verify, we'll go ahead and print our result. And then obviously we have take me. We only passed in 2 words this time. We didn't pass in everything. So we could have done the same thing by just going on with word 3 equals out, and word 4, word 5, word 6, and so on.